It started with a smirk. Senator Lindsey Graham, standing in front of flashing cameras and a room packed with reporters, made what seemed like a routine jab at former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi. It was during a high-profile ethics hearing in D.C., one meant to be procedural, maybe boring, but that changed the moment Graham veered off script. "She's good at press conferences," he said dryly. "Not so much in the courtroom." A few chuckled. Cameras clicked. But not Pam. She was seated directly behind him, calm, composed, and glaring with the stillness of someone calculating every move. That jab? It wasn't the first. For months, she had been quietly investigating something tied to Graham's name, something even his own team hadn't caught wind of. That night, while the media ran headlines about Graham's Bondi burn, Pam filed a sealed request with the special counsel's office. It included names, dates, and encrypted documents, not leaks, not rumors, but verified financial transfers, private emails, and one name that blew everything wide open, his. Lindsey Graham had no idea that within 48 hours, it wouldn't be her reputation in question, but his freedom. By the next morning, something had shifted. A document, redacted but unmistakably damning, surfaced on a whistleblower news site known for exposing political secrets. The title read, "Classified Ethics Complaint, Unregistered Overseas Payments Involving Sitting Senator." Within minutes, Bondi's name began trending. But not because she was implicated, because she was listed as the source. The document didn't directly name Lindsey Graham, but it didn't have to. The identifiers were too obvious: Southern Senator, Judiciary Committee member, active during Ukraine policy discussions, travel records matching Geneva and Doha. Analysts on cable news connected the dots in hours. And while Graham's staff scrambled to deny any connection, Bondi walked straight into a live interview with confidence. "I didn't come to Washington to play games," she said into the camera. "And I didn't spend 20 years upholding the law just to watch someone like him twist it for personal gain." Graham fired back hours later from the Senate floor, furious. "This is a political stunt by someone with a chip on her shoulder," he barked. "She's not a prosecutor anymore. She's a pundit. A performer." But behind the scenes, something even more serious was unfolding. The Department of Justice had quietly unsealed a subpoena for Lindsey Graham. And federal agents were watching his every move. The next day, the Capitol buzzed like a shaken beehive. Staffers whispered. Journalists circled. Graham's office locked its doors by noon, refusing to answer any questions. Inside, the senator was on the phone, shouting, sweating, demanding answers from aides and legal advisors who had none. The documents Bondi submitted weren't vague allegations. They were airtight. Pam had uncovered a financial trail linked to an international lobbying firm registered under a shell company. The shell was tied, through a carefully hidden network, to undisclosed payments received by a consulting entity in South Carolina. One that happened to list ALG Holdings as the beneficiary. Lindsey Graham thought he had buried that firm years ago. What he hadn't expected was that Bondi had been working alongside a former federal forensic auditor, quietly, methodically, since a committee hearing 6 months prior. She hadn't struck back immediately. She waited, watched, and built a case no one could ignore. By evening, the situation exploded. A federal judge signed off on a limited immunity deal for one of Graham's former aides. That aide, visibly shaken, arrived in D.C. with a U.S. Marshal escort. He was ready to talk. And just as Graham was stepping out of a black SUV into a private fundraiser across town, a line of unmarked vehicles pulled up. 2 agents approached him calmly. "Senator Lindsey Graham," one said, "you're under federal investigation. We need you to come with us." Flashbulbs went off. Gasps filled the street. Pam Bondi, watching from a secure location, simply folded her arms and whispered, "That's the rule of law." No sirens. No cuffs, not yet. But the message was clear: Lindsey Graham wasn't going to talk his way out of this one. He was quietly escorted into a black Suburban with blacked-out windows, flanked by agents from the DOJ's Public Integrity Section. Within minutes, word leaked. CNN, Fox, MSNBC, every outlet blasted the same breaking banner: Senator Lindsey Graham brought in for questioning amid financial misconduct probe. Social media detonated. Hashtags trended globally. But the real bombshell was still sealed, until Bondi's legal team made their next move. At 7:15 p.m. her office released an official statement. The investigation concerns multiple undeclared financial interests tied to foreign influence operations. The integrity of U.S. policy should never be for sale. It was now far beyond a political feud. It was a federal storm. Back inside the DOJ holding suite, Graham sat in silence. His attorney whispered urgently beside him, pushing back against the idea of formal charges. But the agents across the table weren't bluffing. They slid a thick folder forward. Inside, flight logs, banking records, wire confirmations, all tied to a time when Graham was publicly championing foreign policy stances, while privately receiving money from those very nations through intermediaries. Then came the question, "Senator, were you aware of the payments?" He didn't answer. He just stared, like a man who finally realized the walls were real, and they were closing in. The room was silent. You could hear the second hand ticking on the wall clock. Graham's attorney spoke first, voice low but urgent. "My client will not answer further questions without full immunity and a written agreement." But the lead agent didn't blink. "That's off the table." Then came the moment no one, especially not Lindsey Graham, had truly believed possible. "We have enough to proceed," the agent said. "Senator, please stand." The metallic sound of handcuffs clicking into place echoed in the room. Lindsey Graham's eyes widened in disbelief. "You're arresting me? Here? Now? You're being formally charged with failure to disclose foreign assets, conspiracy to defraud the United States, and obstruction of justice," the agent replied flatly. His attorney protested. "This is outrageous. He's a sitting senator. And he's not above the law," the agent snapped back. By the time Graham was walked through the back exit of the federal building, the press had already gathered. Someone tipped them off. Cameras rolled as he was loaded into a transport van, this time, no black SUV, no tinted windows, no shielding. Pam Bondi stood watching the live feed from a private office, arms crossed, face unreadable. Behind her, an aide asked softly, "Do you want to release the final affidavit?" She nodded. "Let the public see what he really did." And as the affidavit hit the newswires, the story exploded beyond D.C. It wasn't just a scandal anymore. It was the arrest of a U.S. senator, brought down not by a rival politician, but by a woman he'd underestimated one too many times. By sunrise, Washington was in meltdown. Every morning show in America led with the same headline splashed across the screen: Graham arrested, brought down by Bondi bombshell, senators avoided reporters. Phones rang off the hook in every major newsroom. Legal analysts debated whether Graham would be expelled from the Senate or resign under pressure. His team issued a weak statement calling the arrest politically motivated, but it barely registered against the weight of the evidence now made public. The affidavit Pam Bondi had greenlit was a masterpiece of methodical exposure. It listed a $275,000 offshore transfer disguised as a charitable donation, communications between Graham's office and foreign lobbyists during active Senate sessions, a personal memo from Graham that referred to getting this favor handled in exchange for future consideration. The public was stunned. Voters who had once seen Graham as untouchable now watched him be strip-searched, fingerprinted, and placed in a federal holding facility until arraignment. And Pam? She didn't say much. She didn't have to. Instead, she walked calmly into a joint DOJ press briefing, took the podium, and spoke plainly. No one, not even a senator, gets a free pass when the evidence says otherwise. We're here to remind America that power doesn't erase accountability. Reporters clamored for more. Was this the end? Would others be charged? Pam answered only once before stepping away. This is just the beginning. Back in the Capitol, panic was spreading. Several members of Lindsey Graham's inner circle had gone dark, avoiding reporters, refusing meetings, wiping phones. A few even quietly contacted legal counsel. The DOJ's move against Graham wasn't just about him anymore, it hinted at a broader investigation. And everyone wanted to know, who was next? Meanwhile, Pam Bondi wasn't working alone. Behind closed doors, she'd built a quiet alliance with a select group of federal prosecutors, former intelligence officers, and a retired federal judge who had once presided over major corruption cases. They had one mission: clean house. The group called itself Task Integrity, and they had already mapped out a dozen names tied to the same influence network that funded Graham's secret deals. Lobbyists. Foreign agents. Elected officials. Pam's decision to go public had been strategic. The arrest was the firework, but the real show was just beginning. Inside DOJ headquarters, a war room was lit up with maps, connections, and evidence boards. Red strings tied names to foreign banks, shell companies, campaign contributions, and quiet favors in legislative text. It all pointed to something far bigger than one senator's greed. Pam stood at the center, staring at the board. He wasn't working alone, she said. A former DOJ analyst leaned in. Want to take the next one down? Pam didn't hesitate. Let's move. Hours after Lindsey Graham's arrest, the political elite braced for the next shoe to drop. They didn't have to wait long. At exactly 2 p.m., Bondi's task force filed a second sealed indictment, this time for a sitting congressional committee chair known for aggressive foreign lobbying and deep connections to the same consulting firm that funneled money to Graham. Inside the Capitol, word spread like wildfire: they got a second one. And it's bigger. Bondi's strategy was deliberate: start with Graham, whose arrogance made him a perfect opening target. He taunted, she struck, and now she had public trust behind her. With the nation watching and confidence rising, she pushed forward without pause. That afternoon, she held a closed-door session with DOJ brass. There's one more piece we need, she said. Graham was the bridge. But he didn't build the structure. That came from higher. A quiet figure entered the room, the same former aide who'd flipped on Graham. He looked nervous but resolved. I have names, he said. I have recordings. Pam glanced to the lead prosecutor, then back at the young man. Are you ready to go on the record? He nodded. If it brings the rest of them down, yes. Bondi leaned forward, eyes locked. Then we're going to dismantle every inch of the machine. Across the street, inside a senator's private office, a phone vibrated. A senior staffer answered, pale and trembling. Sir, it's happening again. Capitol Hill was no longer whispering, it was erupting. News broke that a second high-ranking official, Representative Malcolm Kearns, chair of the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee, had been issued a federal summons. Kearns was known for his televised patriotism and frequent overseas visits, but now his travel records and suspicious, consulting retainers, were under a microscope. Pam Bondi hadn't said his name. She didn't need to. Leaks from Task Integrity confirmed it. Kearns had received coordinated payments through foreign intermediaries during active legislative negotiations. In short, he wasn't just influenced. He was bought. The moment the news dropped, Kearns cancelled his appearance on a national talk show and went dark. His staff locked down the office. Phones were unplugged. An anonymous email was sent to the Ethics Committee requesting guidance on voluntary suspension. Meanwhile, Lindsey Graham remained in federal custody. During a preliminary hearing, the judge denied his request for release, citing clear risk of evidence tampering and international financial entanglements. It was a stunning moment: a sitting U.S. senator denied bail. Pam Bondi watched it unfold from her office, her face unreadable. An aide approached with a question. Do we pause for the midterms? Pam shook her head. No. We don't wait for elections. We restore the rule of law now. Across the city, Kern's attorneys scrambled to negotiate. But Bondi wasn't answering their calls. The walls were crumbling, fast. Representative Malcolm Kearns was running out of time. His legal team knew it. The evidence against him was airtight: encrypted wire transfers, private dinner conversations caught on a cooperating witness's phone, and a damning memo referencing a favorable amendment for our overseas friends. Bondi's silence was intentional. She didn't want a deal, she wanted a confession. And that's exactly what she got. On a rainy Thursday morning, Kern's attorney contacted the DOJ and requested an emergency closed-door session. Within 2 hours, Bondi sat across from the disgraced congressman in a secured conference room, surrounded by federal agents and a court recorder. "I'll talk," Kearns said, voice trembling. "But I need protection. I'm not the top of this." Pam leaned forward. "Then give us the top." Over the next 3 hours, Kearns laid out a web of influence tracing back years, a shadow network of wealthy foreign donors, disguised policy bribes, and even the quiet steering of committee chairs to further foreign interests. He named names, some known, some shocking, and revealed the one person he claimed held it all together: a senior political strategist with deep ties to both parties, someone who'd never run for office but had shaped the last 3 administrations from behind the curtain. Pam didn't blink. She just slid a second recorder across the table. "Start from the beginning," she said. And as Kearns detailed a conspiracy that stretched beyond Congress, to think tanks, corporate PACs, even former White House aides, it became clear, this wasn't a scandal. This was an empire. The storm that began with Lindsey Graham now threatened to drown half of Washington. With Representative Kearns' confession, Pam Bondi and task integrity had enough to crack the core of the political influence empire, the mastermind strategist known only by insiders as the broker. He never appeared in headlines, never signed emails directly, but every path, every payment, appointment, and vote, traced back to him. Pam moved swiftly. In a nationally televised press conference, she laid out the entire case. Without dramatic flair or theatrics, she presented a sequence of facts that stunned the country. Graphics, timelines, leaked voice recordings, all revealing how domestic policy had been quietly shaped by foreign influence, facilitated through legal loopholes and hidden cash. Then came the moment that defined her legacy. "No title, no political party, and no amount of money will protect someone from the consequences of betraying the public trust," she said. "We didn't just follow the money, we followed the truth." The next day, federal agents raided a private estate in the Virginia countryside and arrested the man known as the broker. By week's end, Lindsey Graham remained in federal custody, his trial set to begin within the month. Malcolm Kearns officially resigned from Congress, entering witness protection. Multiple high-profile resignations rippled through D.C. A bipartisan ethics reform package, drafted by Bondi's task force, passed the House in a single day. Across the country, voters were stunned. Angry. Empowered. And Pam Bondi? She turned down offers to run for office. She refused speaking tours. When asked why she led this crusade, she answered simply, because no one else would. She disappeared from public view shortly after. But her impact remained, a reminder that sometimes, the most dangerous weapon in politics, is the truth.